Welcome to Epithets, exploring the sacred titles of Hekate.
Hey everyone, welcome to Epithets. We're so glad you've joined us this morning, evening, day, whatever time it is that you're listening to us. I am Isaac Vars, one of your co-hosts, and your other co-host is here as well,
I'm Robin
Robin
Silverman.
Silverman. And we're here to talk about normally the different epithets of Hekate. Today we're talking about Enodia or Enodia. Robin, which one is it?
I always say Enodia. But one thing I do also always say when people ask me about Greek pronunciation is it doesn't matter that much. As long as you're close, it doesn't matter that much.
I was always using the pronunciation Enodia for the longest time. And I was doing some online ritual work with some other folks, and they started saying Enodia. And I was like, oh man, have I been pronouncing this wrong the entire time? But uh, so we're probably going to vacillate a little bit between Enodia and Enodia. Either way, you know which one we're talking about. We were talking about the epithet of in the road. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. Robin, do you have anything to this is a tricky one because I is this even originally Greek?
Yeah, Enodia is Greek for in the road. You said it.
Okay.
Yep. She's the
Okay.
goddess
Yeah.
in the road. In the road. It can also kind of mean by the road, but in the road is pretty direct.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I wasn't quite sure if it was Greek because it's an older word because this is one of those epithets that is actually used to be a deity of its own until it was conflated with Hekate, as well as being conflated with Artemis and Persephone, I believe, in some situations. But of course, we're here to talk about Hekate. So yeah, Enodia, a deity from pre-fifth century BCE.
She's an older deity and she was originally from the region of Thessaly, which is a region in Greece. It's kind of in the middle into the east in Greece. And she was her own goddess. She had her own temples, her own cult in Thessaly. And she was the goddess of the roads. And she was associated with the dead. She was associated with things like cemeteries. She was associated with travel. She's often depicted on a horse. And she was associated with all these kinds of sort of transitional ideas. And she was a major goddess in Thessaly, all on her own. And the association here that I love is that Thessaly, historically, is, especially in Roman times, but even earlier, going back to like the 5th century, Thessaly is known for its witches. It's like the stereotype of the Thessalian is a witch. We have a reference in Aristophanes in the Clouds, in one of his plays, to the idea of, oh, you're going to draw down the moon like a Thessalian witch. And we don't really know what that means. I mean, a lot of people have speculated about drawing down the moon could be. There's a whole lot of ink spilled on that. But the way Aristophanes said it was like he assumed everybody would know that this is a thing that the witches of Thessaly do. They draw down the moon. The witches of Thessaly are also very well known for herbalism, especially poisoning, but also magical herbalism. They're very well known for speaking with the dead. Sort of it's kind of like the stereotypical scary witch is the witch from Thessaly. The one who has the big cauldron with the brew, the one who communicates with the dead, the one who can shapeshift and who can transform others into other things. In The Golden Ass, which is a Roman novel from 2nd century CE, which is the only surviving Roman novel we actually have, but it's wonderful, and I would recommend anybody who studies magic to read it. But the story, it's a comic story mostly. It's really a story about initiation. But in the beginning, the hero is actually traveling to Thessaly. He's traveling to Thessaly because he's obsessed with magic and he wants to learn witchcraft. and spoiler here, he gets turned into a donkey by a witch. and the whole book is him trying to get away from that. But him going to Thessaly to learn witchcraft, that's where you go, to learn magic. That's where the magicians are. That's where the witches are. So Enodia being a goddess of Thessaly and this sort of goddess of these very liminal ideas makes her a goddess of witchcraft. So her becoming conflated with Hekate makes absolute sense with Hekate as a goddess of witches.
That's really interesting. And now I feel like I have to go to Thessaly at some point just to
I
check it
totally
out
want to go to
and
Thessaly.
get
I
there.
mean, it's, in modern Greece, I'm sure it's a
Right.
perfectly pleasant Greek province, but yeah, someday I want to go to
Maybe
Thessaly
not so
to
many
get
witches
on.
nowadays, but
Well, who knows?
that's still really it's still really interesting because there's so many themes there that are now like the realm of Hekate. It's really interesting how she's really absorbed a lot of that into who she is, because that idea of, witchcraft and herbs, roads. This is the first time we've really talked about ghosts and Hekate, which is a really big deal. Just because we haven't talked about it in the first 3 episodes isn't really, like, I'm not trying to, I don't think we're trying to downplay the importance of her connection to the dead. That's a big thing, especially in later literature. And it seems that this is kind of the first place that we start seeing that, because we talked about some of her other aspects, and they're not really talking about her connection to the dead. And I don't know, it's really interesting to see kind of like the where it all started, where that connection started coming from. As I was reading, it was talking about her connection to funerary rites, even with torches. We were talking about how there was a torch race that people thought were potentially in honor of Enodia, and she wasn't just in Farai. We were talking a little bit about the sanctuaries that we've discovered, or dug up, or have been around, and the biggest one seems to be the one of Farai Thessaly. But I had a little bit of a list of different sanctuaries that people had found for Enodia: Argos, Epidaurus, Sicyon, Corinth, Athens, Issa, Western Macedon. It's kind of she's got quite the footprint. And so it's really interesting that, she, I think, I was just reading that she was even considered one of the 12 Olympians at one point.
Oh, I hadn't heard that. That's neat.
And I mean, I imagine it's very specific and regional, but it's really interesting that, I know, it's interesting how syncretization and how that happens, and how different religious, different deities kind of absorb other different deities.
Yeah. My feeling with sort of the Hekate and Enodia connection is that, there's a lot of Enodia's iconography that kind of overlaps with Hekate. The torches, the
Right.
dogs, the idea of being like in the liminal space. And then this association with ghosts and with the dead. I feel like Enodia is like part of Hecate's DNA. Like that's how that kind of got imported in, and I don't want to get too structural about it, but this idea that Hekate has this association with ghosts and the dead because Enodia came and sort of became part of her, that's conjecture on my part, but that's kind of my feeling with it, is that, that Enodia kind of brought this to Hekate, and they got conflated because of their overlapping roles. Enodia also had roles in protecting children, protecting, very young children, the same way Hekate does. So it made sense that they would get conflated, but then Enodia kind of brought the ghosts in.
Right. Well, there's an interesting correlation there too as well. So from what I've seen in the research I was doing, Hekate did not get the epithet of Enodia until the 4th century BCE. So, there was kind of when Enodia was a big thing, and then as Hekate started getting more traction as a deity, they lumped them together. But you made me think of the interesting correlation between a deity. So there's literature that would talk about Enodia and Hekate as both the bringer of bad dreams and
Mhm.
also the person that protected one from bad dreams. In the
Yeah.
same way that, they had this horde of ghosts that would either mess with your dreams, or if you were in good relationship with them, they would protect your dreams from
Mhm.
the other ghosts or other bad things. And that's an interesting dichotomy that happens a lot in magic even.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of different Solomonic pentacles that I know I'm kind of jumping the shark here and going to other magical streams, but just open-ended different magical practices that you can use that are designed to, like, well, you can use this to bring bad dreams to somebody, but you can also use it to protect yourself from bad dreams, which is just, I don't know,
Yeah.
historically interesting. I love some of the overlap of Hekate and different things. Like, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about just crossroads in general and the magic of crossroads and how that
Yeah.
pops up in so many different traditions, and not just with Hekate. We see her as the mistress of the crossroads, and I associate that a lot with Enodia because, again, in the road crossroads, you could make arguments that there are other epithets that might be a little more crossroady versus roady, uh, cross of crossroads versus of roads, and but the idea of coming to this place of choice is also a place where people would leave offerings or something to be dispersed. And it's really interesting how just like the crossroads are this magical place in all these different traditions, not just with Hekate, but we could talk about different fairy lore that talk about crossroads, or modern, modern, when I say within, what, past few hundred years, American crossroad lore, with the idea of going to the crossroad, meeting the devil or something like that, and him giving you a choice. Or you could even look at another thing that comes to mind is in Yoruban traditions, Elegua, who is quite important. That's the first. That's the first spirit you're supposed to meet in those traditions, and he is a deity of the crossroads and of keys and of opening roads, which is a really interesting overlap. But anyways,
Yeah. I think those of us who
crossroads.
do magical work, you'll meet, these sort of door guardian figures, and they vary
Mhm.
across cultures, but Hecate is definitely one of them. She does have this role of, when I think of Enodia, when I think of the goddess in the road, it's not just sort of, literal roads, though that's part of it, this idea of traveling and being in this in-between space. When you're on a road, you're not in any one place, right? You're going between places. But in a magical sense, especially in the sense of working with the dead, you need the road between this world and that world, right? This world and the next. And the crossroads is kind of the space in this world that represents that path, the path away from uh the material world, the everyday world, the mundane world, to the world of the spirits, to, the world of the dead, the world of the underworld.
Mhm.
And all of these figures you just mentioned, we've got the fairies, we've got sort of the folkloric devil. All these figures are figures that kind of exist at the intersection of reality and the other world. And so Enodia, Hekate Enodia, that epithet, for me, when I work with Hekate, when I want to explore those other realms, when I want to go and, work with the dead, or even not just with the dead, but also with these otherworldly beings, like you mentioned, fairies. I do fairy work, and my Hecate work and my fairy work overlap a lot because the fairies also live in that liminal space, right? Um,
Mhm.
so when I want to go to those places, Hecate is the one to kind of be the guide on the road. And like you mentioned about dreams and about these spirits that can both bring bad dreams and protect from bad dreams, the sort of the common theme there is having an alliance with the things that have control over the bad dreams, right? If you are friends, or at least allies, I think allies is a better term here, if you're allies with those things that can bring these bad dreams, then you have some pull there, right? You have some sway, you have some authority. So having some connection with, relationship with the beings that guard these liminal spaces, these roads between, is the thing that will make your magic effective.
Right, right. At least, keep yourself safe. The way
And
to,
will keep you safe, yes.
yeah, to keep you and loved ones safe is to be on good terms with the things that would make it less safe. Kind of
Yes.
like, I guess, paying off the mafia a little bit.
Kind of like that, yes.
Like, paying for protection, but also protection from them.
Yeah. That's why I went to the word allies instead of friends. You're not gonna go, hang out and have a beer with them, but it's good to know they're on your side.
You're on good terms, and
Exactly.
that's kind of where you want them to be.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I see in my notes here. We don't kind of forgot to mention that Enodia was shared sanctuary space with Zeus. She was
Yes.
considered that important that it was Zeus and Enodia, at least, pre 5th century BCE. And that's kind of a big deal. And yes, we see that later with Hekate, Zeus and Hekate in, oh gosh, why is my mind blanking on that? Lagina.
Regina. Yeah,
There
and
we
Regina.
go. And Lagina later on. But so, either way, people people really respected these deities of magic, of witchcraft, and of the roads. And whether that was, again, a little bit of more making allies with the scary things than not. Uh, I guess even with Zeus, there's a little bit of that. Thunderstorms are scary. Thunderstorms are powerful. You'd rather have a thunderstorm on your side than coming in and just wrecking everything. So
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
kind of the same idea with.
a lot of ancient religion and even modern religion is kind of about that, right? You're afraid of the gods, right? You fear the
Mm,
gods, and by doing their rites, you are making sure they don't hurt you, right? You're making sure, keep the floods away,
right.
make sure that keep the pestilence away, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
So yeah, this idea of the gods as something to fear and something to want to have on your side is pretty widespread in just about every religion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is kind of the thing. It's trying to find a way to be in better relationship with some of these big forces that can be destructive.
Yes.
Even death, looking at ghosts or travel with roads, there's so much, death is obviously scary, and you don't want to, and people's relationship with funerary rites,
Yeah.
perhaps seeing improper burial procedures, getting sick from that as angry ghosts,
Mm.
going for I guess, a more materialistic view of that. You'd want to be on the good side of the person that controls the ghosts, and good
Yes.
side, and in having proper form in dealing with death, which would hopefully also keep you safe in a very physical, bacteria-free way.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really interesting going into this to see how much we have in Hekate from Enodia, how much she absorbed it, and that whatever kind of changeover happened between the 5th and the 4th century, or I guess, maybe 6th to 4th,
Yeah.
how it just kind of, the different waves and the different cultural changes that we only have a little glimpse into because that was a really long time ago.
Yeah, I think the sort of the earlier Hecate was not so much this sort of scary witch goddess of, ghosts and all that, but
Right.
she was more of a protective figure, right? She was more of a kind of almost a nurturing figure, almost a mother
Mhm.
figure. And I feel like Enodia, her getting conflated with Enodia, really brought out like in the Hecate in Shakespeare, right? In Macbeth,
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
witches are
Yeah.
Heath. Those are totally Thessalian witches, like that style of witchcraft.
Mhm.
And so her kind of coming in there kind of brought that sort of that scary night hag image that a lot of people have associated with Hecate, I think comes from Enodia, because it's really not there in the sort of classical Hecate. But, by the time of, the writing of the Orphic hymn, right, the first word in the Orphic hymn to Hecate is Enodia and Hecate, right? I'm right about that,
Right.
right?
Yes, no, I
Yeah.
believe you are correct. That is the first. I don't have it on me. I'm going to actually, while we're talking, what's really funny? The notes I took were on uh the script for our monthly Dipnon, which we do
Okay.
have the Orphic hymn to Hecate. So
There we
yes,
go.
I can tell you the first three words, Enodian Hecate Kleizo. Yeah, the first line, Enodian Hecate Kleizo Triotidin Aranan, which the translation from Patrick Dunn is we call the beloved goddess of the roads in places where three ways meet. But
Mhm.
Enodian right there of the
Right
road.
there, first word, yeah. So, but
First
yeah,
word.
so by the time of the Orphic hymn, that was a very primary identification of Hecate.
Right, right. Ah, that's fun. And also that's really funny that that worked out because I do
Yeah,
have
that's
it right
great.
here. Uh, now I'm looking to see if we have any other. No, I don't think it really repeats anywhere in there. I'm doing a quick scan. But anyway. Yeah. So magically, I think anybody listening can kind of see a lot of that, a lot of the magical applications of this. One, there's deep liminality here, right? Going back to the idea of crossroad or in between, even with travel, you are in between one place and the other. So Enodia might be a fantastic epithet to call on for safety in travel, calling upon her and maybe Hermes at the same time because they're they work together.
Enodia
Uh
actually, I just want to jump in there because that reminded me that I
yeah,
did find Enodia being used as an epithet of Hermes as well.
really.
Yeah,
I mean that makes
yeah,
sense.
it does make total
That
sense. Yeah.
makes sense. I was actually kind of surprised that that didn't show up. So that that tracks. That tracks. Uh, so yeah, that'd be a wonderful name to call on or work with to make maybe a travel talisman. Oh, you could do a really cool thing where one side one side is a travel talisman of Hermes, the other side a travel talisman of Hecate and Enodia, and that's a cool little that's a cool little magical idea that I might steal for myself. It's not stealing if it
Make me one.
hit
That
me,
sounds like a
right?
great idea.
It's I have a little I have my monthly Magic by Mail subscription, and every month I make something a little magical. And I think everybody next month might be getting travel
All
talismans. Oh, put it right on the keychain. Oh, ooh, I like that. Okay. Not
right,
trying to
I'm sold. I'm sold.
sidetrack us, but
If you make those, I'll
other
get one.
things. Hmm?
I said, if you make those, I'll get one. I'm sold on that. That's a great idea.
All right. I'll just if I make them, I'll just send one to you. I'll just pack it up, send it your way. But what else? What other things that we can do? Because we talked. There's a lot of crossover here with Plidocus that we were talking about last episode, and so obviously opening ways, opening roads. This would be another name to call on. Also, we talked about dream protection. We could call in her. What was? Gosh, I'm trying to find my notes here. There was an epithet that was applied to. There we go. Uh, Alexiadis and Enodia Alexiadis, an epithet given to Enodia that is now also an epithet of Hecate. Alexiadis, averter. You could also, call on her, Hecate Enodia, Hecate Alexiadis, Hecate Apaturpeia. That'd be a good three.
Mm.
And three is a good number for Hecate. A good list of three epithets to maybe call on for dream protection if you were making a dream protection amulet. For me, I would probably take I've done different dream protection amulets before for clients, one way you could do this is take a white piece of cloth, I'm going to make it really simple, a moonstone or a piece of white halide if you want to go crystally and like that. If you don't work with crystals, you don't have to. A little bit of mugwort. Oh gosh, you could throw in two more herbs because again, sticking with three. So mugwort, mullein, and gosh, I'm trying to.
Dandelion? I'd go with dandelion.
Which
I'd go
one?
with dandelion on that.
Oh, okay, there we go. And uh, put the three in there, and before you close it up, put in, right. If you want to look up if you want to look up some ancient Greek or Greek letters and write uh and Enodia, Hekate, Enodia, like Hekate right here, one side, and then Enodia, Apotropea, Alexiadis, and write those all in Greek and close it together, praying to Hekate, asking her to bless it and to protect your dreams. Wrap it up, close it up, put it under a pillow. That could be a simple dream protection spell. Uh, let's see what other things could be calling on Enodia for, or being suggesting to people for her.
Um,
Just
I mean, for me, I use it more than anything else to connect with the ancestors.
mm,
I in my own work, connecting with place is really important to me. Connecting with, the
mhm.
spirits in my own house, the spirits in the city where I live is really important to me for my work. And Enodia helps a lot with that, with making those kinds of connections to spirits of place. Because the ancestors are always here, they're always with us. So making those connections kind of plugs you in to where you are. And
Yeah,
Enodia is great for that.
that'd be a great one to use if you're going to a cemetery to kind of introduce yourself to all
Yes.
have a
Yeah.
big party with the dead, make
Yep.
little offerings to everybody. And of course, if you're doing that, please, kind of know what you're doing. Make sure you don't have any have your procedures to make sure you don't have anybody following you home if you're going into cemeteries doing work with just all the dead, because not all dead you want to, again, it's nice to know them and have them as allies but not as friends maybe. uh but yeah, that would be perfect. And even going to again, bringing in the crossroad, I can see in my mind different cemeteries have those little crossroads and the little roads that are in between graves. So that'd be a really lovely spot to go do that. Make an offering to everybody there. Just introduce yourself and to just let yourself be known and be like, hey guys, this is me. I'd like to be on good terms with everybody. And then leaving it at that and then going home and taking a spiritual bath. But absolutely those are some solid Enodia uses right there. But wonderful. She does also, I don't think we'd mentioned the animal connection. You did kind of briefly talk about the
Briefly, but
dog
yeah, we could say a
connection.
little bit more. Yeah, the dogs, the horses, the dog thing's big, like
Snakes.
snakes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Dogs, horses, bulls, snakes, uh,
Yep.
all those guys. Um, but yeah, the dog thing is, there's trying not to like put our modern morals onto it. The dogs are used often in kind of scapegoat sacrificing
Yeah.
in ancient world. And obviously that's, you know, I'm not saying we should be doing that. Like my dogs. Uh, I'm also a vegetarian, so I'm not into the idea generally. Uh, but this was, historically accurate and should be mentioned that they were used as offerings. And that's something that we would find in a lot of different places. At crossroads, we would find remains of animals that were sacrifices for these deities, including and especially dogs, a lot of times black dogs, usually used as either scapegoating or something else. And so with that, we now have these animal associations with Hekate, and there's some other epithets that we're going to get a little deeper into her animal associations and her being kind of bestial herself,
Mhm.
not just that, or her connection to hounds and a little bit of maybe even the idea of the wild hunt and connecting all of that.
Mm,
I don't know. I don't know how historically connected the two are. So that's going to be a really interesting dive. I think
yeah.
that
I don't know if there's a
so
historical connection, but I think there's definitely a spiritual connection.
yes, yeah, exactly, exactly. And I think that is one of the fun things about, at least for me, doing this podcast. This is pushing me to do more research and to get deeper into the history of Hekate, which as a devotee, this is a wonderful practice for me. So not to make, this podcast all about us and our own personal process, right? But this is definitely it has been really wonderful to push, at least for me, push me into deeper study and deeper research about each of the epithets so I know her on this deeper level. Like
Mm.
the idea of Enodia as a deity pre-Hekate, I would say for a good chunk of my relationship with Hekate, I did not know that. I did not know that Enodia was this own separate thing that then got absorbed into Hekate. So it's been this has been a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, I'm having fun
So,
too. As you say, this is a devotional practice for me to do this podcast, is
absolutely.
exploring these epithets. Yeah.
So that's great. So I know we didn't. So this is going to be kind of a springing on Robin, because we did not talk about this before we started, but we hadn't talked about what we're going to be doing next episode. And I was thinking Sotera might be a really good going from Enodia, who's all about ghost, going to Sotera, kind of the
I, I
we're
would
going
love to do
chthonic,
Sotera.
and that's going to be quite the thing because I know that there's a lot there, and I know you know a lot about Sotera, especially with the Chaldean oracles,
Yeah,
and so it's going to be that should be a really fun episode.
yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to that one.
Yes, all right. So that will be our next episode. Before we sign off on Enodia, did I miss anything?
Probably, but that's okay.
Okay, perfect. That's the thing. And that's a nice bit about the crossover with so many of these epithets that it gives us room to, if we find more, it gives us room to kind of backtrack and add more because we're like, oh, remember when we were talking about an idea when we're at, I don't know, Trividia or something like that. Uh you can be like, well, we didn't mention this, but this is also important.
Yeah, it all
So
builds.
that yeah, it all kind of ties together like a web, which is a epithet of its own, weaver, uh, or entrapper, depending on how you uh, um, translate it. But we're not there yet, and we're not there next episode. Next episode is Sotera. So thank you everybody for listening. Thank you for being part of this. Remember, you can find us on the socials. We do have a Facebook page. We do have an Instagram page. And we do have an email. These are three ways to get a hold of us. Comment, mention if there's any epithets that you want us to tackle, give us any feedback or whatever. We'd love to hear from you. You can find us mostly it's Epithet Podcast. I think that is our handle on both Facebook and Instagram. So we hope to see you there, and we look forward to next episode with Sotera. Until then, take care.